I kind of put a little example together because then
Yeah.
I think that'll help people see who it's going to be advantageous for. So let's say that you bought a JWB rental property and as a part of that rental property, we did landscaping, we put a fence in, we put appliances in. Let's just say that that cost $15,000 for us to do that. Did all that work, you bought it at market value, all that good stuff. Well, those are write-offs that would qualify for bonus depreciation. So $15,000 and you're able to write off 80% in year one, that is a $12,000 write-off in year one. Now, if you didn't get any bonus depreciation and those elements that I just talked about were just done with straight line depreciation, you would have only received, I think it was about $500 in write-offs just in the normal straight line depreciation. So if I'm comparing closing by the end of this year versus not getting any bonus depreciation, then you're getting an $11,500 tax savings write-off by simply understanding and working with somebody who can help you take advantage of bonus depreciation. So if you start to look at that and you multiply that times 35%, which is just the tax rate that we use when we estimate tax savings, that's going to save you about $4,000 in tax savings this year by using bonus depreciation on one rental property. Okay. Now, the example that I just gave you, though, is when everything works perfectly. Brian was very quick to point out that that's a general example where everything's working perfectly, and there are many other things that go along with this. Please do not take what I'm saying and just 100% think that it applies 100% to you, because it probably doesn't. There are other things that you have to take into account. So the chances of you maybe getting all $4,000, maybe that doesn't happen as far as tax savings. Maybe it's more like $2,500 or $3,000, and maybe your CPA actually costs more. What Brian was quick to point out is he said, if you're starting with going with no relationship with a CPA and then starting to work with a CPA, it's going to cost more in the beginning versus if you have a 10-year relationship and they just add this on. So it might end up costing you $3,000 of cost, and you might get $3,000 of savings on one rental property. And so, does it make sense if you're one owner and you have one property right now and you're just starting to work with a new CPA? Does it make sense to take advantage of this and close by the end of this year just simply because of that? No, it probably doesn't. You probably wanted to close on it either way because of all the other reasons, but this one specifically doesn't really make a whole bunch of difference. But as you start to think about other examples of who it really will work for, think about somebody, we talked about being a passive owner of a business. So you own McDonald's franchises. Let's say that you own 10 of them. You have management in place, so it's very clear that you're a passive owner. So this would qualify as passive income on your taxes. Let's say that you sell a number of those and you have these huge gains this year. Well, if you already were thinking about buying, call it, let's say 10 rental properties over the course of, this year, next year, maybe the following year, it would really help you from a tax perspective to speed all of those up and to close by the end of the year, because then it might have only cost you, let's say $3,000 or $4,000 from your CPA's time in order to do this, but you might get 10 times that $4,000 write-off. It might save you $40,000 in taxes and only cost you 3 or 4. So it's a function of how much passive gains do you already have from other real estate and other businesses that you're passive in, and then how much are you already planning on buying rental properties? Those are really the two things to consider. But if you're one of those people who happens to have a lot of passive gains and you know that single family rental properties are in your future, this is absolutely a reason to speed that up and to close by the end of the year.
So if I am someone who has other investments that are passive income related investments, and I plan to exit those investments and reallocate into rental properties in my future, right? If I'm going to shift my allocation of where my passive income is coming from, then it would really make sense to pull that demand forward in this next quarter and try to get into the rental property investing space as soon as possible so that we're closing this out by December 31st, because you have a lot to gain there. Mm-hmm. Is it always going to be like asset to asset, different assets? Is there a reason, like if I'm going to do a 1031 exchange for real estate that I'm going to then put into that is giving me passive income, and I'm going to go into rental properties, Is that an opportunity there, or is it generally an extra opportunity if it's coming from something else that's a passive investment?
No, real estate would be a great thing. So I could think of an example where there's a client who has, have owned rental properties for 10 years, and rents have gone up tremendously over the last 10 years. And their expenses, their largest expense stays flat because they had debt on the properties and their mortgage payment stays the same. So at the end of the day, their net rental income has been growing tremendously for 10 years. Let's say they have 10 properties and their income has grown tremendously, and their home values have grown tremendously as well. And so, you could really look at the amount of gains that that person has in 2023 being very high, higher than their typical depreciation would write off. And they could end up paying taxes on that income, either from rental income or from sales. And so they may decide to sell some of their assets in some parts of the country and reallocate those and bring those over to Jacksonville. And bonus depreciation might really help them because they would be able to write off the rental income that they're probably already earning. They would be able to write off the gains that they took from the equity that's been built up in the homes that they sold. And then, just like this example, if they bought 10 rental properties and closed by the end of the year and here in Jacksonville, they might be able to get, call it somewhere around maybe $4,000 in real tax savings for each property. It might equate to really $40,000 that they keep in their pocket at the end of the year. So it doesn't have to be just other assets coming into this asset class. It can absolutely be reallocating where your real estate is and bringing that over to another market like Jacksonville with JWB. The important thing is, again, you have to close by the end of the year in order to get 80% of the bonus depreciation write-off.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. This reminds me of when Early Bird Dean Curry asked us a question about he's got a property that he's planning on moving off of, but there's some kind of like short-term window that he's considering, and he was wondering if appreciation is going to make up for that. But and you're like, well, you can't really guarantee exactly what appreciation is in the next year, but this is another one of those considerations for him then, right? If you're going to move it from one property to another and you're coming into like this asset class here, then that's another kind of like bonus thing for him to consider as well then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got the opportunity to work with the early bird here recently. So I want to say congratulations. He just put another property under contract, and we're getting pretty close to number 10 for the early bird over there. So, and when you get to 10 properties with JWB in your portfolio, we drop your property management fees, not just to 9%, but down to 8%. Starts out at 10 for everybody. Once you get to 5, we drop you to 9, then it goes to 8. So Dean and Nan over there are super close. I'm super excited for them to keep growing.
I love that. And if you want to follow those footsteps, you know where you got to go. You got to go to chatwithjwb.com. If you want to pull forward your demand, if this is something that you're looking at doing, it makes sense to go to chatwithjwb.com, plan that call, because this may be a 60-day process, right, GC, or maybe a 30-day process. You want to be able to get all your ducks in a row. This isn't something you want to do on December 14th, which is why we're doing the show today, right?
Yeah, you can't do it at December 14th. If you come to us December 14th and want to take advantage of this, we're just going to tell you politely that I'm sorry, because this is an IRS thing. It must be closed by December 31st of this year. And you do not want to roll the dice. I would hate for people to want to take advantage of something like this and then go under contract, let's say in 3 or 4 weeks. Real estate sometimes can be complicated, and sometimes things delay things on the back end. And so there is no alternative to closing December 31st if you want to get an 80% bonus depreciation. So it is imperative, if you have been considering this, if some of those examples that I've described, as far as who this is really right for, describes you, then you need to jump on the phone with us. At the same time, while there is an urgency to help you take advantage of this, we're still going to make sure that we bring you on the right way. And so many times that's, a couple of weeks of phone calls. So that's why we intentionally plan this show here at the beginning of October. It's because, going to chatwithjwb.com right now and setting up an appointment is the first step. And if you do that, and it takes, call it a couple of weeks of good phone calls for us to set you up the right way, then you still do have time to be able to take advantage of this.
All right, buddy. Sounds good, man.